following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
Welcome back, Truth Seekers from around the world. It's time for another edition of the Flat Earth Files. It's episode 35, and joining us here in just a moment is Chris. I'm going to have a great conversation, a little bit about his awakening and his thoughts about the flat Earth. Before we do, just a quick note, if you'd like to reach out to us, don't forget it is the Flat Earth Files at gmail.com, the Flat Earth Files at gmail.com, and my apologies, I'm a little behind. I've been down and out with a little bit of food poisoning the last 2 days, so I'm a little behind, but I'll try to be caught up by Sunday or Monday. Again, keep the emails coming. Just appreciate it if you would be a little patient on the backside, but I will certainly get back to everyone. And don't forget about our website, theflatearthfiles.com. Feel free to join the chat room, the forum. Lots to do there. All right, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest tonight is Chris. Chris, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing good, brother.
Thanks for taking the time to join us. You reached out to us, I guess it's been a week or two ago, and we're happy to have you on here. It's always good to have a fellow veteran on the program. So I guess you could, give us a little background about yourself.
So I'm 35. I live in the suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota. As you stated, I'm a Marine. I got out in 2010. Did a deployment to Afghanistan in 2009. I'm a father of four. I've got two stepchildren, 13, 14. I have a 8-year-old and a 19-month-old. I'm happily married. Been married for 3 years, remarried. Yeah.
I have a question for you. We've heard specifically over the last 3 years, a lot of the things going on in Minnesota. Were you born and raised there?
Yes, I was.
And you're in your mid-30s now. Have you seen a big change in your community over the last, 3 decades?
Unbelievable change. Minnesota, not to get too deep into politics, but it is a very liberal state. However, it wasn't always so liberal. I remember for most of my life, into my early 20s, it was kind of a mixed pot. If you asked anybody in public or watched anything on, the indoctrination window, the TV, it was one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas, 7, 8, 9 years ago. It has taken quite a turn. It's a very hyperbolic area to live. If you get anywhere near the cities, unless they're your friend, don't talk to them. Don't bring up anything, of substance at all, either way. It's a lot different than when I was growing up as a kid or even a teenager.
It's interesting that it's Minneapolis being so far north. That's always I'm not sure why it became the hub it's become today. I know Hubert Humphrey, I guess he was a big Democrat. And again, don't want to jump too much into politics, but when I was growing up, anytime I thought Minneapolis, I always figured it as being in the country and everybody fished, right? And then you grow up and you see how it's turned out. I found that to be very interesting, specifically within the last just 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty different in the last 5 years. Walls is, just the entire government here has changed everything. It's a little California. I know they're passing laws right now, and you can, kids can come here from all 50 states if they want to change what they are and change what God made them to be. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really interesting. As a father of four, and how do you navigate? The school system, has that been corrupted?
I'm not shy about it. I speak up whenever I see something wrong, and I have, as I stated, I have two teenagers in middle school. One of them is going to go to high school next year. This is where I guess my wife and I we differ on the school. I personally could take my children's feelings aside. Hate me if you will, anybody out there, but I could set them aside and pull my kids out of school tomorrow. But I'm a member of a team, so that's not doable.
Right.
But I want to pull them out of school. It is. There's so much distraction and no learning. My kids come home. My older two kids, they come home. They're 13 and 14, and if you explain something, you pick any random topic and you explain it to them. At the end of it, they just look at you and they say, "Is that good or is that bad?" No, there's no critical thinking questions, no questions leading them to the truth. They just want the truth because it's given to them every single day in every single classroom. And what's more so given to them in the classroom is social aspects. There's so much social talk in school, stuff that is not objective, stuff that is not education. And there's a lot of stuff in classrooms. It's insane. I went to conferences. I think it was last year. I didn't go this year, or open house. Sorry. I didn't go this year because last year I walked through seeing BLM flags and rainbow pride flags hung in classrooms. I mean, that's influence. And when I spoke up, I was told that it's not my place. And people out there listening that know me, that's when I just hung up the towel because it's either literally fight or flight. And that was right around the time that Mayor Garland came out with that statement to all parents that are harassing principals. And I mean, I'll take credit for it. The principal of their middle school retired after last year, and I probably spoke to her about 50 times and left maybe 10 voicemails. So I'll take a little bit of credit in that retirement. But these people don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be questioned about what they're teaching or talking to your kids about. And I can't believe it being 35 when I was in school. If a teacher talked about race, religion, or creed or sex of any kind, they were fried.
Yeah.
Completely fried. But it's not the case anymore. They're almost championed.
Yeah, it's they have certainly cut the parents out of the loop, and this started back in the 70s, and it's just grown worse and worse. This plan, it goes back to the Communist Manifesto, and the 10th plank there was hijacking education. They have done so, and they've, in the public school system, they just want to keep the parents out, and it's a real sad thing to see. Their job is, just to educate. The parents' job is to raise them, to give them, instill their morals. But the government has just hijacked everything, and it's really sad to see. And then take, for example, today, you and I are both veterans. The federal government, the U.S. government, has been looking at every single individual here and around the world and said, we do not have boots on the ground in Ukraine. I have been saying, because I've known firsthand since the end of last summer on my other podcast many times, that we've had boots on the ground since last August. I live right near Dover Air Force Base. That's all I'm going to say about that. I've known this for quite some time. People I know have children that are in Ukraine. So here's this 21-year-old kid, if you believe the story. I don't know if it's even, how they like to cover their behinds with making up other lies. But, here's this 21-year-old kid who is in a National Guard unit, managed to get into a skiff and release a document on whatever little platform he's on with his game chat. And it turns out we've had boots on the ground for quite some time. And since 9/11, they always tell us, if you see something, say something, right? And this guy saw something, and in this day and age, they hammer the guy who shows the truth versus the liars. This is the upside down world we live in. And it's just every day you wake up, you think things can't get more bizarre, but they certainly do. Yeah.
You explaining what that young man leaked was the first time that I heard what he actually leaked. I didn't even know, because since my awakening 3-4 weeks ago, I have watched maybe 10 minutes of what we call in America. Um, and I've even turned off my notifications on Twitter. I still go on there, but I'm really not diving in. It has been not of my interest. When before I would spend 2-3 hours a day watching Newsmax. Not to plug them, they're just another, different side.
Yep.
Like you say, they're the right wing. They're flapping with the left to fly.
Yep. Yeah, that's I get my news through a few folks on Telegram. That's about it. People who are on the ground, people I trust. And then that came out today. It was all over the place. And, in some aspects, you can't believe it. A 21-year-old National Guard that it's obviously a top secret document. You just don't know what to believe anymore. But at the end of the day, they punish the guy who tells the truth. And the entire government who's been lying to us. Where's the Congress votes for allowing us to have our troops on the ground in Ukraine? It's just, and listen, it's nothing new. They did that in Vietnam. We had boots on the ground well before they told us. I mean, it's nothing new. But anyway, we're getting. I'm just. It's one of those days where I get pent up and I want to go off. But let's talk a little bit about your awakening. So you're newly awakened. Is the flat Earth, was that kind of your first awakening? Have you ever gone down the other? Rabbit holes, 9/11, JFK, the moon landing, and these type of things?
I have never for once, as far as back as I can remember, I've never once believed that JFK was assassinated by one man who used to be a Marine in broad daylight in one of the biggest cities in America at the time.
Yeah.
In one of the biggest organized parades. Everybody knows what goes on with presidential parades. It's hard to be even within the vicinity, even if it is a parade, which you can't even remember the last time they had one where a president was exposed. Maybe it was Kennedy. But I've never believed that. Even before I went to join the Marine Corps, I believe Zeitgeist came out. When did Zeitgeist come out? I want to say I saw it before I enlisted.
Yeah, like 07?
That might be. Yeah, I think it came out and I watched it right before I enlisted in end of 2007. And it blew my mind. But at the same time, I mean, I was still ramping up to go be a Marine, and I wanted to go to war and fight for my country. And I'd watched it multiple times while I was in the Marine Corps. And since then, I've come to the conclusion that we most definitely, without a doubt, blew up or demolished our own buildings. All the details around all the flights and everything I haven't dove into, but it is very evident that those buildings would have never fallen without demo. I mean, in the Marine Corps, I was cross trained as a 51. So, anti-armor and explosives, if you want a door, I can make a door for you. If you need to take down half a building, I can take down half a building for you, like Timothy McVeigh did. Or at least whoever helped him. Yeah. Because that dude, let's face it, he did not have the skills that you and I were given.
No, of course
you
not.
were even better trained in explosives. That was your job.
Just another Lee Harvey Oswald.
It's just another Lee Harvey. Yeah. But flat Earth, it's been brought up to me a couple times in the last few years. And I recently had one of my friends over that I apologized to because he brought it up about 8 months ago. And I totally did like everybody else. I told him he was, feeling all right, dude. Like,
wanted to have him institutionalized, huh?
I mean, like, what kind of phone do you have? What are you looking at? Like, because he dove so into it, and he's very animated with hands, and I guess it wasn't delivered right or by the right person, but a couple weeks, or I'd say it was about a month ago now, because I think I emailed you a few weeks ago. I went over to my friend Walker's, and I don't even know how he told me. I think he just told me because I was talking to him and asked him, have you talked to this person and that person? Because we grew up together since we were in kindergarten. We know a lot of the same people. And he said, nope, nobody talks to me anymore. And I was like, why? Because I know the earth is flat and I have proof. And I just kind of looked at him sideways like, okay, man, well, I mean, I know you're not crazy because I've known you my entire life. Like, so, I mean, I thought to myself, I'll hear him out. And, I mean, he gave me books, showed me passages in all the different books he's reading, and studied up on astrology and, history dating back to World War II, brought me up on NASA, and he really just knew where to hit. I consider myself a critical thinker, and he talked about, Wernher von Braun. I'm a history buff. I knew he was a Nazi. Did not know he had any part in NASA. You tell me a Nazi was brought here to work in NASA, and they're not lying to us. That doesn't make any sense. So I mean, he sparked it. I went home. I mentioned it to my wife, and she hasn't ever met Walker. At least she has now, but she hadn't at the time. So she immediately, oh great, he met up with one of his old friends, and he's crazy. And he just started sending me stuff by Crow 777.
Great stuff.
He sent me the level documentary. That changed it all. I mean, I think a lot of human beings are visual. That's why the TV has its effect, the effect it does on society.
Yeah,
but
great point.
The way that they lay out all the facts in level, I'd say about 15 minutes in, I felt stupid and mad. I did. To be honest, I felt dumb and mad. Just totally hoodwinked, man. Because when you are able to look at everything objectively, and I've never even put any thought. It didn't even take much thought in all to really come to the conclusion that we live on a flat, level plane. It does help that I have, a lot of, I would say, background or familiarization with Christianity. I was confirmed at 17. I haven't had a profoundly close relationship to God until the last 3 weeks. Because one thing you realize, if you truly do realize and are awakened to the fact that we live on a flat, level plane, a biblical earth, and if you know anything about the Bible, Genesis 1 verse 1 through 14 mentions it almost 11 times. Yep. The firmament, how we were made, what we live on, and I knew all that, so I connected it really quick, and I just got really big goosebumps. And I took a hard left towards Jesus. I've read the Bible quite a bit in the last 3 weeks, more than I have in my entire life. I've introduced God to my wife because she hasn't had zero exposure to Jesus and the gospel. Two alcoholic parents, just a really rough upbringing, and never brought towards Jesus, and in fact probably brought the opposite way. And that leads me to my mom. I'm a huge, even at 35, I'm not afraid to say it, I'm a mama's boy.
Nothing wrong with that, bro.
She was the first lady. It's not my number one, but she was the first lady. Yeah. And she's never believed in God. I know I mentioned this in my email to you. She's always believed in the power of people, and she was raised in the church. She went to Minnehaha Academy in South Minneapolis. It's a private Christian school all the way up till 12th grade. And she never believed in God. She always thought that it was a cult. The way that the school and the church said you had to live your life, she just could not believe that that's how our Creator would, the way the church tells you. That's not any creator I would envision creating us. Cause she's a mom. She wouldn't say a lot of the things the church says God expects out of you, that she wouldn't ask those things of her own children. But when I showed her level, now we watched the whole thing and we paused it many times to go, oh my gosh, like, your realizations just start coming. Yep. And as you awake, it's just like ping, 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 ping. And you got to pause it and talk about it. Well, after about an hour and 45 minutes, we finally got through the hour-long documentary. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes. And, she looked right at me and said, I believe in God. And it just was, it was a crazy realization, the way you live your life. She's 57. I can only imagine, the choices you made, that you remember you've made, thinking that there was no God and there was no heaven. You now realize, and she knows that book, whether she believed it or not. She knows the Bible in and out. And I mean, in the last 3 weeks, man, I don't know if you can tell. It's an emotional thing, but in the last 3 weeks, my mom has called me up quoting scripture. She has prayed with me, and it's incredible. And I hope that somebody listens to this and has somewhat similar situation and can reach their family member, because, knowing that your mother's not going to be with you in heaven, it's pretty tough. And then when that changes, which you never thought it would, I don't know a word to describe. Incredible doesn't describe it. Liberating doesn't describe it. I don't know an English word to describe how joyful I am and will forever be because of it. So flat Earth, biblical Earth, it has changed my life huge. Not only the way that I'm going to carry myself and have carried myself in the recent past, but my relationship with my mom, the fact that I know I'm going to see her in heaven. It's crazy.
It's an amazing story. And that seems to be not every single conversation I've had, but many of the conversations I've had, one thing they seem to have in common is it certainly does pull you closer to God. And we realize that we're not an accident, through a series of big booms and evolution. We were, we're part of a creation. We're put here in this timeline on purpose. And I'm glad that you and everybody else, I'm glad to be a part of this great awakening that's going on. And, if you want to call it a Jesus movement like the 70s or whatever it is, we see, and before the program, we talked a lot about, before we came on the air, we talked a little bit about all the evils that are going on in the world today. At the same time, there is a bit of the Great Awakening is kind of the term that's thrown around, but that's exactly what it is. There is really a lot of people that are waking up because they're seeing through this evil, and they're understanding that the way things are being played is just not right. And the whole thing, once someone you think that was supposed to take care of you, they continue to lie. You're like, wait a second, everything is a lie. And then you realize in the truth movement, everything in our history has been a lie, or at least at a minimum, a lie sprinkled with a little bit of truth, which 95% of our news is. There's 5% truth, and they sprinkle it with this is how we want to mold their mind. So that's just a tremendous story, and you were getting goosebumps. I was getting goosebumps because you have an entire family that's been touched by Christ, and that's just amazing to hear. And it makes me happy to be a part of this. The one other thing I do want to say is I was really struggling before I decided to go forth with this podcast. It is difficult. I thought the one thing I didn't know how I was going to overcome was getting people's attention on an audio podcast, because you are spot on with one thing. Video is a great attention getter. As far as explaining the flat earth, it's really difficult sometimes to explain what's in your mind and get it into the listener's mind. Like I can think of something, but I want to get it in the listener's mind exactly how I'm thinking of it. With video, you can just pull something up and say, see. But, I guess we're doing okay when I hear stories like you.
No, George, I want to take a minute to commend you. I mean, I can't remember which guest. I want to say it was Rich. I can't remember.
Yeah, just the other day.
For certain. Yeah, just the other day.
Yeah,
you do have a very easily digestible way of putting this information out there. And anybody that's actually trying to research and not just listening to it to laugh at, the literature that you read, the history that you read, the books that you read, the knowledge that you put out, it's good knowledge, and you do it in a way that, I don't know, it brought me in. I listened to I listened to 30 episodes in 4 days.
Holy cow, dude.
Yeah, I couldn't stop listening.
Wow.
You know, whether it was your informational episodes or your interviews. I mean, Nemos, that interview was amazing. And it taught me a lot about the religious aspect that I didn't know. The brothers that you had on, amazing. I mean, the guests that you have on, I know they come to you, but you do a very good job for not having a visual aid. You do an amazing job, and I've turned a lot of people to your podcast, and they love it. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Doing it, brother.
You know, there's a lot of people in the truth community that's working together to try to wake people up. And I do think the people at the top are starting to feel the heat because they're fighting back. They're throwing more stuff at us. That kind of tells me that they're feeling the heat. So that's good on us, all of us, for that. Going back to your awakening, when you remember talking with your lifelong friend, was there one, you know, when he was going on explaining the different things, I'm sure curvature and all these type of things, was there one thing when he presented to you said, oh my gosh, I think he may be onto something here?
Well, I actually can't really remember if it was anything that he said, because I mean, he sent me the level documentary, and I'm gonna keep going back to that because it really did, within the first 10 minutes, just the opening questions got me to think, and all it took with me was just to think and ask myself a couple questions. I flew across the world.
Yep.
I stopped in Greenland. Why? I flew from Hawaii to Afghanistan. Why the heck would we go all the way up there and then come all the way back down? I should have been to Spain or maybe north, like Egypt, or like the northwestern portion of Africa if we went straight east. But no, we went all the way up to Iceland, actually. I think it was Iceland. No, it was Greenland. But we stopped in Germany and Ireland. We came down after we went, well, not down. We came out after we went in. But you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That was the first thought that I had in my life that I could go back to. And yeah, we don't even fly in straight lines. I worked for FedEx Express for a while. You know, everything moves by airplane. You can look at the flight paths on there. They only put a big arc on it just to show you that they're actually going in a straight line, to try to alleviate from the fact that they're going in a straight line.
Exactly.
That's why all these planes, they're all arc flights, but they all go, maybe they are right because they all go up, which is towards the center, and then hit their destination. But my trip to Afghanistan, I was thinking about that. He sent me the Level documentary, and I watched it right away. And like I said, 15 minutes into it, I was awake, completely awake, and rightfully done with almost everything I've been taught. I started going outside every single night, looking at the stars, and I can look west, northwest every single night and see the Big Dipper in the same exact spot from the start of the night to the end of the night. It doesn't change in 12 hours. That right there, proof to my eyes. But the powers that be will tell you not to believe your lying eyes every single day.
And we talked earlier about your other, awakenings as far as JFK and these other things. And I'm right there with you. It's a whole different feeling when you understand that, wow, this is, 9/11 was one thing and everything else. But my goodness, when you learn that the earth is flat, it's, like I've said many times, I don't think I slept for 2 weeks. Did it affect you? I mean, obviously, you just told us about how you found Christ and your family, very emotional conversation. But the level of excitement, it's like literally being reborn, is it not?
Oh, it most definitely is. And I actually made a statement to my mother. I said, well, they can stop calling it reborn, and they can just start calling it awake, because you can take a reborn person and an awake person, and they have two completely different mindsets about not only the world we live in, but Christ, the Bible, everything that you've been taught in school, in church. it's a completely different way of looking at everything. And yeah, those are small little cover-ups within our country. And you can maybe point out a couple small ones across the earth, but this is the entire human population. This is all of humanity for over 1,500 years, maybe longer. I mean, this is insane. And I was telling you, I'm a Libra. I don't go too much into horoscopes, but just my personality, being wronged, unfairness, hiding of facts, it all just doesn't sit well with me. I didn't lose any sleep, but I'll tell you, my wife was a nervous wreck, freaking out about how I could go over to my friend's house that she had never met, that I've known my whole life, and come back. And within 24 hours, I'm telling her the earth is flat. Jesus for sure exists. God created all of this. And this is a lie, this is a lie, this is a lie, and this is a lie. And then I just kept pointing out things as I noticed them or as I thought of them. And it got to be overwhelming for my wife. I will say that. Kelly was, she was a little overwhelmed the first couple weeks. But since then she's met Walker and his wife. And she sat down and watched the Level documentary. And again, 15 minutes into it, a few questions from the good old narrator, and she's pausing it and looking at me and going, "Oh my goodness!" And I'm just looking at her. I'm just looking at her with a smile on my face, saying, "I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not the one lying. It's right. All those people."
Have you asked yourself the question, which I did, what now? Like, yeah. For me, it was like, what now, and how do we spread the information? Has that crossed your mind yet?
Every single day, George. I mean, I'm a Marine. I'm a combat Marine. I don't talk about things. I do things. I move mountains or die trying, and I do it now, not later. So it's been very difficult for me because I'm not. I love what you do, but the world takes all kinds, and there are all kinds. I'm not too good at presenting information in a non-abrasive way. I'll put it that way. Gotcha. And when I get into topics and discussion, when I get pushback, I get a little anked. I get a little worked up, a little more than a little. So the whole spreading of knowledge isn't really my wheelhouse, but I'm sitting where I want to do something. It's really tough. Not do something to a body of people or anything, but
of course,
like I want to blow this straight out of the water. And since like it took 2 days for me to figure out a way that I could easily blow this out of the water, and it'd go to South America to the equator, and then have somebody go to Africa at the equator. And we both have cell phones. Let's both walk, according to our knowledge, south, or as I like to say, out. Let's walk out, and let's figure out if we're walking further apart or closer together. Because if we're walking south from the equator, we should get closer together, not further apart. And we have the technology now to figure that out very, very easily. I mean, honestly, I think I could, if you had cell phone reception somewhere in Africa around the equator, and I did in South America, all we'd have to do is go on Snapchat, for crying out loud. Or just figure out how to get, our IP addresses geolocated, and we should most definitely see that we're further apart as we walk south. But I mean, that's just an idea, but I want to either go to the center or go to the edge. We all know what's at the edge, but yeah, I'm a man of action. I don't really spread word a lot, but that's been on my mind. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, that's, and you hear the old stories of Admiral Byrd. Again, you don't know if that's propaganda the CIA had him push, or if that's legitimate story, that there are lands as big as the United States on the other side of the ice wall. Because we don't really know if this is everything. We've been lied to about everything. And man, that's such a great point about, going to the equator, one in Africa, the other on the other side of the world, and walk the other way. You're exactly right. If we're on a globe, if we're getting closer to each other, then we were wrong. It's a globe. If we're further away from each other, well, it turns out we're right. NASA, you need to start working on a repayment plan, lickety split.
Yeah, I want my chunk. That's for sure.
And, we need to arrest a lot of people, and we need to redo the school system. And I'd never really thought of it that way when you were talking about, 9/11, while it affected a lot of the world, it really just had a strong effect here. Sometimes, we as Americans, we just think of the things that happen here. But flat Earth is the one thing that literally does affect every single person around the world. That was a very good point you made, and that resonated with me when you said that.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It affects every single human being. And yeah, I did go fight a war against other human beings. And we're all fighting. You look at every conflict, we're fighting because that top 2% or 1% of the 1%, 8,000 people, as you've discussed before on your show, roughly are running the world, and they're sending mass amounts of populations to fight each other, for telling them why they're mad at each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, personally, I take it to a whole new level because I was part of that. But I mean, even without being in a war, I would have a huge problem with that, knowing what I know now. Even if I wasn't a veteran, we're constantly being turned against each other. But if everybody knew this one fact, none of us commoners, if you want to call us that, would be fighting with each other. We would all be looking at that top 8,000 people.
Yeah, I think, Manly P. Hall said, great veil will fall upon man. If we could, recognize the symbols and these type of things. And I do think if we were able to push this message out and prove it, all these, you see online, all the people arguing about Bud Light and all this other stuff would just quickly fall by the wayside. And, while, there's a lot of evil agendas out there, I would think that a large portion of the people around the world would put their, small, we're all different. There's 8 billion people on the earth. So obviously we're going to have issues, but I think if this came to light, it might save the world and bring us closer together. And like you said, we could take the scum, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, all the people who were the puppeteers, and put them in their place. And we could actually enjoy life, get away from GMOs, go back to, your neighborhoods. There's just so much we've gotten away from. You hear people say, the grocery store's running out of food, or everybody's going to go hungry, this, that, and the other thing. People have forgotten the basics in life, how to garden, and just all the simple things that, just maybe 2 centuries ago was a part of everyday life. If you didn't do, you didn't eat. And we've been raised to rely on the government for education, the superstore, the super centers for our food. We've just pawned off so much responsibility. I wonder if people can actually handle the freedom if they were given it to them. Do you understand where I'm getting to?
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm not in Minneapolis. I'm really close. I mean, if I go 5 miles towards Minneapolis, it gets pretty populated. The neighborhoods get, pretty tight together. Houses 4 or 5 feet apart. I totally lost my train of thought. Doesn't happen often.
No, that's okay. We were just talking about giving our, relying on the government for education, the grocery stores for food, and
yeah. I mean, it's a mad frenzy when anything goes on the news about grocery stores. I noticed it after the first big wave of COVID. Everybody was buying toilet paper, which was ridiculous. There was no toilet paper anywhere. That was the only thing off the shelf. You could get anything else. But people were flocking to the stores to buy whatever was said on television, like it wasn't going to be produced anymore. And they were all buying it at one time. And I've noticed people are getting back to that, but I believe the vast majority of America, I mean, there's no education on how to grow anything in school. unless you take like a botany class in high school or a biology class that's going to teach you how to grow and take care of plants. But there's nothing in school from the time you're in kindergarten to a 12th grader, unless your parents teach you how to garden. You're not going to get any skills on how to provide your own food for yourself at all. And there's absolutely nothing on hunting or fishing. So, I mean, our society, if you just grow up going through what the government gives you, they're purposefully not teaching you how to provide for yourself. And that's the biggest problem right there.
Yep, spot on. And it's funny you mentioned that. I was just thinking back to during the whole COVID era, I was doing a radio show, and I remember the news coming out saying that there was going to be a shortage on something called DEF, which is like a diesel exhaust fluid that trucks built over like 2010 have to have. And I remember, like, literally, we live in the country, but we have a little hub down the street where a lot of truckers come through. You know, every town has one little place where the truckers stop and get their sandwiches and food. Literally 2 days after that newscast, there was like 4 pallets sitting out front of DEF. And then I went to Walmart, there was DEF. So I started to see a trend. These people are intentionally floating this out there and then cashing in on the fear porn. This is something they've been doing here in Delaware. If there's a chance of snow, you can kiss milk bread goodbye. It'll be off the shelves by the time you get to the grocery store. It's just amazing how powerful Edward Bernays, if he had the power of the television when he was around, he would have really had this country in a tizzy.
Oh, we would have gotten here a lot sooner.
Much sooner. And I think, you know, it goes back to when they saw how people reacted in the worlds, and that was a radio broadcast. 7 million people calling emergency hotlines, and people in New Jersey shooting their water towers because they thought it was a giant. It's just crazy how gullible we are, and also how much faith we put into people that we don't know. I've never met Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, all these other people who sit in front of a TV and tell us these events. Why for 30, 40, 50 years did we take these people's advice for wholesale? And that's something I ask myself a lot. I'm like, wow, I was pretty gullible.
Well, it could, you know, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with my older kids, my 13 and 14-year-old in school. You know, I can explain something to them in depth, and they'll look right at me and ask me, well, is that good or bad? And sometimes it's not even that's good or that's bad kind of scenario or topic that we're talking about, but our schools have been, and even more so now, are teaching the answer and not teaching our population how to ask questions.
Right, which completely kills critical thinking skills.
Oh, it's dead. I mean, there are kids that are, you know, they're just naturally questioners. You know, you have a lot of them on your show. I question a lot of things. I've definitely been roped into a lot of things. Yep. We all have, but they are, I don't want to use grooming. It puts people on a different topic, but they are, and indoctrination said so much here, but, they are teaching our kids how not to think, and how to just take an answer and memorize an answer. And when the topic's brought up, well, no, it's this. And if you say anything else, and they just look at you like you're crazy, because that's not the answer they were given. They can't ask you a question as to why you think that, or they can't ask themselves a question about it at all.
That's exactly right. I want to shift gears just a little bit. Something that I thought about a lot. You know, you see what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, and how Russia's our enemy. But at the same time, we have this really cool treaty with Russia down in Antarctica. So does that lead credence to you? Do you think all the people at the top of the food chain are just puppets? Do you think
most definitely. I think they actually get together. I mean, as parents, okay, any parents out there, you get together with your spouse when something needs to be taken care of, and you go offline in the back room, in the bedroom, outside, but you go away from your kids to discuss what to do with your kids. If they're bad, or, you know, if you're planning a surprise, like you don't really do the planning in front of your children. Well, I don't think they do any of the planning in front of us either. I think that they, you know, whenever they have, like the last time Biden went and talked to good old Vladimir, There was no cameras in there. And even when there are cameras in there, it's nothing but sit down, ask each other the generic questions that presidents and other foreign leaders have asked each other for decades and upon decades, shake hands, smile at the camera, and that's all. But we know that's not it, because they had to have had a conversation about substance. Well, we're never going to know what that substance is, because I think they get together and talk about doing just what they're doing. And then they use the tool of the television to tell us the vision that they want us to see, believe, and hear, and perpetuate and push. And it works.
Yeah, it's quite a powerful tool. And, I've really seen, my wife is intensely going back and watched some TVs from the mid-50s into the 60s, and you can really see how the narrative changed when they started to push spaceships going to the moon, putting globes into these things. And like you said, the television is powerful tool that we need to get away from. Go ahead.
No, yeah. You were talking, talking with Big Country about that, and you talked about how you watch Leave It to Beaver.
Yep.
He'll sit down to talk to Beaver, and for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and there'll be a globe right there.
Yep.
But that changed in like 1958. You were saying, which obviously I don't remember, but and I haven't watched a lot of those old flicks, but I do remember watching like Hogan's Heroes, and older shows like Mork and Mindy on in the morning, and those older shows, they don't have a lot of this stuff. I mean, you don't even get the universal globe dun 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 in the beginning if you go pre-60s for a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And people should be very cognizant, because I think they use everything to try to poison you. Music, unfortunately, that's just a fact. The media, the internet, everything is used for two reasons. It's to get an emotion from you, which I think this whole push with social media is going on now. It's to get an emotion out of you. It's to upset people, and it's used to distance people. We all, we see that Dylan Mulvaney guy get a Bud Light ad, and everybody flips out, and oh my gosh, and that's all people talk about for a week. And I think the people at the top do this stuff intentionally, and we're missing the real things that are going on, like the discussion we're having tonight, which we are being lied to. They are keeping... they're telling your children that you were here by accident, that the earth came about because of a random explosion, and fish crawled up onto the beach and eventually learned to adhere to that, blah, blah, blah. And they keep us fighting amongst each other. And the real truth is, look, God made us all. We need to put all our petty differences aside, and we need to turn the tables on the evil people at the top of the food chain. One thing I do want to say before I turn it back over to you, I get a lot of people who say, listen, in the end, God wins. We know how this ends. And I get that. I completely agree. I understand. However, the Bible also says we don't know when the end is. And if it's not for another 200 years, why would we subject our children, our grandchildren, and their grandchildren to go through the same thing if we have the ability and we have the numbers to fight back and right the ship? Do you agree with that?
110%. I totally do. I can't sit back and not take action. That's why I raised my hand. That's why I served this country. That's why, at least why I enlisted. And I have 4 kids, they're presumably going to be on this planet or around. They're going to be alive for, it's hard to untrain your brain, ain't it? The P word comes out once in a while. I don't complete it most of the time, but they're going to be here for hopefully another 67 years. I look at what's happened in the last 10, and there's no question that we need to change it. There's no question that it is probably the most important thing in my life now. I believe if you want to change the world, you don't go out in the street and whine about it. You don't get on TV and cry about it. You don't write your politicians and gripe and complain and whine. You have as many children as you can take care of, and you raise them right, and you raise them to live a life of God for God. And I mean, that's definitely changed a lot recently, with my awakening. Definitely, bringing my kids closer to God and introducing them to Jesus in an intimate way. But if you want to change the world, you're not going to do it on your own. It's not going to be an overnight thing, I don't think. And the ultimate long game is, I've got 4 kids, and I'm going to raise 4 very sharp, questioning minds. And if everybody can do that, we'll change the world in a matter of 10, 20 years. I know that's not fast, but that's faster than 100 or 200.
That's for sure. Does it, something that's bothered me a lot is, our government, if you look at our money, it says one nation under God. And it's kind of blasphemous to me sometimes that, this government says, one nation under God, and then they push these agendas on us, these evil agendas. And again, just seem to happen within the last decade, it seems. Now, obviously, there's been a bullying the frog type of deal from the Federal Reserve to World War II to Vietnam. It's just been a slow boil. And then 9/11, the Patriot Act, more and more of our liberties have been taken away. But like we were talking before we came on the air, the last 10 years, everything is really accelerated and going sideways. And it certainly doesn't seem like our government really serves God. While they may say they do, it's quite an evil agenda that they are dealing.
Oh, totally. They are brazen now. I mean, they don't even try to hide it most of the time. I mean, they'll lie day to day, and when called out on it, even our president in chief will giggle when he's called out, and that's okay now. I mean, I can't remember ever before this that it was okay to be questioned as a public official and just laugh it off, walk away, and nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Absolutely nothing. And furthermore, the division, the fact that some people just believe everything from the government blows my mind, and that it's not a majority, it's a close 40 to 50% of this country believe the government provides you with things, believe that the government is their ruler. I mean, have literally replaced God with government.
Exactly.
So and I don't think that was so 10 years ago, and I'd be even pressed to say 5 years ago.
You can almost take what you said and take it back to Nimrod, because that's what he wanted to do with the Tower of Babel. He wanted to replace it with government. He wanted a one world government, and that's what they're quickly accelerating to. And going back to what you said earlier, I think the term public servant is dead. That they just think that we are their servants. They are not public servants. They think that we answer to them. It's kind of sad how that has all flipped on its head as well. One thing I haven't touched on that I like to ask all my guests, during the whole COVID thing, did that wake you up as well? Did you see the overreach in that? Did they overplay their hand? Did you and your family kind of say, well, wait a second, if this is a miracle drug, what's going on?
So one thing I didn't go into is my mother's background. She's been a nurse for 30 years. I did go to school for nursing. When the scamdemic hit, I was at St. Cloud Technical College going to school for paramedicine. Got out of that real quick. I mean, I just started school, and I saw where it was going. I mean, I talked to a couple students not long after that, and they said, I think it was a year later when the vaccine rolled out, immediately every single one of them had to get it, or they were dropped from their course because they couldn't be a paramedic without it. Not a lot of people pushed for an exemption, but this is the first time in my life that we've been locked down. And my understanding of martial law, which We could say it wasn't martial law. You can call it soft martial law. You can call it whatever you want to, but they told you had to stay home. They told you couldn't work. They didn't put the National Guard on your streets, but if you're listening, do they have to?
Exactly.
They shut down our entire country. So yeah, I mean, right away, I was a little bit at first distracted by a lot of the riots in Minnesota that were going on at the time. You remember George Floyd. I'm not going to talk too much about it, in my opinion, but you're either all about that here or you're all about law enforcement in Minneapolis. And I back the blue, but it was very distracting at first. So I didn't get my, I guess it didn't get my attention, my whole 100% attention until after things kind of calmed down here in Minnesota. But I mean, it was very evident that we've essentially lost control of the message, because that message was pushed and almost immediately followed by half the masses.
Yeah, I completely forgot you're in Minnesota. That summer of 2020 was right in your backyard.
Dude, I was down in Minneapolis next to some cops for a little while. Hey,
Crazy
took an oath,
times.
dude. And I've told you multiple times, I'm a man of action. I don't sit around and think or talk much. I just get up and I do. So I went and I offered my services, and obviously, because of laws, I couldn't really do much, but at least I tried. And that was enough for me. It sufficed that itch a little bit, but right after that, I mean, all of our rights were being taken away. I was being told I couldn't go to work if I had a sniffle. Like, get the hell out of here. My dad would not let me stay home from school unless I went to school and the nurse called him and said he's got a fever and he needs to go home. Like, now half of your place of employment can stay home, and some places get paid for it because you have a sniffle or a sore throat, and it could possibly be this thing. We don't even know what it is yet, and we don't even know where it came from. But hey, we have a cure for it. Can't tell you what it is, but we got a cure for it. You should take it. Oh, by the way, you have to now. Like, my mom resigned from United Healthcare. Not ashamed to say that. Neither is she. United Health Group. They pushed it on everybody. It's one of the bigger insurance companies, health insurance companies in the country. She had been a work at home for 15 years. She hadn't gone into the Minnesota headquarters for probably 5-6 years. And they still told her that she had to get the jab. And she resigned. She just told them that she's not going to work there, and she is enjoying an early semi-retirement.
God bless her.
Yeah.
My wife went through the same thing. She resigned, and it's not funny, haha, but it's funny if you read just the first 5 or 6 sentences of the Nuremberg Code. If I could read it real quick.
Yeah.
The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress. Do you think telling someone if they don't take their jab, they're going to lose their job is duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion? And that's just like the first 4 sentences. So you tell me how these people aren't facing crimes against humanity.
Because we don't have not a prosecutor with gall. We don't have a single non-corrupt prosecutor with any power or pull. There's a lot of corruption, and it's taught. Unfortunately, if you're an attorney, you're going to go to school. That's going to be taught to you, not law, not unbiased defense of the Constitution and human rights, but that's what's going to be taught to you. How to run the system their way. It's crazy.
Indeed. Well said.
And the Hippocratic Oath has absolutely zero power anymore, it seems.
You're 100% right on that as well. That's something once again, we're living in a bizarre world. That's for sure. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to discuss?
Um, Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. No. I just really wanted to come on here, share my story with my mom. One thing my friend has started asking individuals. You guys talk about people that come on here. You yourself would talk about breadcrumbs when trying to share the truth.
Yeah.
And my buddy, he came up with a question, especially for non-believers in Christ. And he said, just ask him, if I could prove to you that God exists, would you want to know?
That's great.
And, I was already awake at the time, but knowing a lot of non-believers, I know I haven't had a chance to use it, but I will be using it in the very near future. My brother, for one, non-believer, I'll probably be asking him that. But I wanted to tell people if you have, I've only been awake for 3.5 weeks, so it hasn't been a long time, and I haven't interacted with a lot of people. But the few that I have, it can turn you off to try to spread the truth. Just don't let anybody's reaction try to turn you away from perpetuating this message, because it is the only message.
Yeah, that's a great point. Don't let them extinguish your flame, because
Just don't.
it is the most important truth. And if you can just get hold of one person to listen and they understand, then that person will get hold of one person. It's like the old TV commercial and they told someone and they told someone, and it will spread quickly. And that was the same thing going back to COVID. People started to understand what was really going on. All the people, the alt websites, the alt news sites, the podcasts, like myself on the Fact Turner, we came out and we spoke on it, and people listened. People had questions, then they understood what was going on, and they spread the word. So this is one way we can really fight this evil, the hidden hand, the people at the top, whatever, really, I guess at the end of the day, it's Satan's minions, really. At the end of the day, that's what they are.
Yes, it is.
The people at the top of the food chain are Satan worshipers, nothing more, nothing less, and they are trying to keep God away from you. And while the education system and everything else is something to distract you, the planet, we're hurtling through space, chasing the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. All that stuff is to hide God. And I love hearing the stories like you had tonight, Chris. It gave me goosebumps. I could feel the excitement when you were talking about when you kind of awakened and you realized God was, right above us looking down. And it is. I remember that feeling, and that's one of those things I'll never forget. And I'm so glad that you were able to come on and share that with the masses. It's a very important story to share.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm just an average 35-year-old blue collar guy raising some kids in Minnesota, and I appreciate you giving me the platform to share the story of myself and my mom. It's pretty huge. It's huge.
Yeah, and we'll keep your family in our prayers, and all the folks out there in the great state of Minnesota. And you had mentioned beforehand, if Chris's message resonates with you and you'd like to reach out to him, I'll give his email address on the air, but it'll also be in the show description. So if you're driving down the road in your car listening to this podcast, don't feel like you got to pull over and write it down. It'll be in the show description, but it's chris.wright0042@gmail.com. And you can connect with Chris. Chris, I'll give the floor to you to wrap up. Any last things you'd like to say to the masses?
No, just stay true. It's easy to play something off when you think somebody might think you're crazy and be like, oh, no, it's just something a buddy was talking about. But stay true to it. You'll be surprised the demeanor change in the people that you're talking to when you look at them with a straight face and say, no, I know this. And at that point, they're either going to turn and run or they're going to be intrigued. And even if they do turn and run, they might look it up, and they most likely will. So just stay strong, keep pushing the message. This is the only message. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and by the way, that's we'll wrap that up with that. But that's a great point because, David Weiss, when he emailed me, whatever it was, how many years ago it's been, I deleted the email, but it just set in my mind. I had to go back and pull it out of the trash of my email because I felt bad because I always tell people, email me, I'll email you back. So just even people may turn their back on you and blow you off. There's a good chance when they get home, that might eat away at them a little bit, and maybe, just maybe, they'll find that one video that'll set them along their way. So, again, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us tonight, episode 35. Stand by. I want to chat with you real quick off the air. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, I'll get to your emails here over the next few days. Thank you for listening. Make sure you drop by the website. And again, if you want to email us, it is theflatearthfiles@gmail.com. God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend. We got a couple more interviews coming your way. I'll probably drop them like Tuesday and Thursday. So you guys take care. God bless. And we will see you.
T-Mobile has invested billions to light up America's largest 5G network, from big cities to small towns, including right here in yours. And great coverage is just the beginning. Right now, families and small businesses can save up to 20% versus AT&T and Verizon when they switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today.
Plan savings with 2 to 3 lines of T-Mobile Essentials versus comparable available plans. Plan features and taxes and fees may vary.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.